The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in their designated spots, their worried whispers filling the air. The emergency meeting lights cast a deep red glow across their faces. Lord Blake stood at the center platform, his hands gripping the edges of the control panel. His gray skin had turned almost white with stress as he stared at the holographic display floating above the chamber floor. The image showed a small blue planet, third from its sun, surrounded by rapidly growing signs of technological advancement. "Members of the Council," he spoke, his voice carrying through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "What you're seeing is impossible by all our previous calculations." He waved his hand, and the hologram zoomed in to show orbital stations and small ships moving around the planet. "This civilization, these humans, have achieved in decades what should have taken centuries." A low murmur spread through the chamber. One of the council members, a tall being with metallic scales, stood up. "How did we miss this?" he demanded. "Our monitoring systems should have alerted us long before they reached this level." Blake pressed another button, and new data streams appeared around the hologram. "They've managed to hide most of their progress. Our long-range probes only detected their advancement when they began testing their first faster-than-light drive." He paused, letting the information sink in. "A drive, I might add, that uses principles our scientists haven't even theorized yet." General Vale, the Council's military commander, stepped forward. His massive frame cast a shadow across the platform as he studied the data. "Surely they can't be that advanced," he said, his deep voice filled with doubt. "Our civilization has existed for 50,000 years. These humans have barely mastered spaceflight." "That's exactly what makes them dangerous," Blake replied. He brought up a new set of images showing human cities, their technology, and their military installations. "Look at their rate of progress. In just 200 years, they've gone from burning coal to splitting atoms. In 50 years, they've gone from primitive rockets to ships that can reach their system's edge. And now," he highlighted a particular data stream that pulsed with warning colors. The chamber fell silent as the council members read the data. It showed energy readings far beyond what should be possible for such a young civilization. "They're experimenting with quantum mechanics at a level we've only dreamed of," Blake continued. "Their understanding of dark energy and matter manipulation is unprecedented. At their current rate of progress, they could surpass our technology within decades." An older council member slowly raised her hand. "What are our options?" Blake straightened his back, his expression grim. "We have three choices. First, we can attempt peaceful contact and invite them to join the council as equals." He was interrupted by several shocked outbursts. No species had ever joined the council as equals in their first contact. "Second," he continued over the noise, "we can try to contain them. Send our fleet to demonstrate our power and force them to accept our authority, as we've done with other emerging civilizations." General Vale nodded approvingly at this option, his military mind already planning the deployment. "And the third option?" someone called out. Blake's voice grew quiet, but everyone could still hear him clearly. "We leave them alone and hope they don't notice us first." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some council members demanded immediate military action, while others called for caution and diplomacy. Through it all, Blake stood silently, watching the hologram of Earth spinning slowly above them. Finally, after hours of debate, the council reached a decision. They would send a fleet, officially for diplomatic purposes, but large enough to send a clear message of power. General Vale would command the mission personally. As the council members filed out of the chamber, a junior member named Reith lingered behind. He approached Blake, clutching an ancient data crystal in his hands. "Sir," he said hesitantly, "I've been studying some old records. There's something about humans you need to see." Blake looked at the young member tiredly. "The decision has been made, Reith." "But sir, these records show patterns. Every time humans have faced a superior force in their history, they've done something remarkable. They adapt. They innovate. They—" "Enough." Blake cut him off. "The fleet leaves tomorrow. The matter is settled." As Blake walked away, Reith looked down at his crystal, its surface showing images of human warfare throughout history. He couldn't shake the feeling that the council was making a terrible mistake. Reith couldn't sleep. The young council member sat in the vast archives beneath the council chamber, surrounded by glowing data crystals. His fingers moved quickly across the holographic controls as he searched through more historical records about humanity. "You're still here?" The voice made him jump. An elderly archivist named Mentor stood in the doorway, his 4 eyes blinking slowly at the screens floating in the air. "Look at this," Reith said, pointing to one of the displays. "These humans fought something they called world wars. Twice. Each time, they made technological leaps that should have taken centuries." Mentor walked closer, his old joints creaking. "Many species have wars, young one. Not like this." Reith brought up more images. In their first world war, they went from simple flying machines to combat aircraft in just 4 years. In their second, they went from basic rockets to atomic weapons in 6 years. He paused, letting the information sink in, and that's not even the impressive part. The archivist raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" Reith's fingers danced across the controls again. "Every time humans face a stronger enemy, they don't just fight harder, they get smarter. They invent new ways to win." He showed scenes from human history, small armies defeating larger ones, primitive cultures adapting to fight advanced invaders, and countless examples of humans overcoming impossible odds. "The Council is making a mistake," Reith continued. "They think sending a large fleet will intimidate the humans. But look at this pattern. When humans feel threatened, they don't surrender. They innovate." Mentor studied the data carefully. "Have you shown this to General Vale?" "I tried." Reith's shoulders slumped. He laughed and said I was reading too many war stories. "Lord Blake wouldn't listen either. They're also sure that our superior numbers in technology will be enough." A warning light flashed on one of the screens. The fleet was preparing to leave. Through the archive's window, they could see massive warships rising into the purple sky, their engines glowing bright against the dawn. "We're poking a sleeping giant with a stick," Reith muttered. Mentor placed a hand on the young member's shoulder. "Then perhaps we should prepare for when it wakes up." Over the next few days, Reith dug deeper into the archives. He found more patterns that worried him. Humans had a unique ability to unite against outside threats. Their entertainment, something they called science fiction, showed they had been imagining and planning for alien contact for centuries. During a minor council session, Reith made one last attempt to warn them. He stood before the remaining council members, his voice steady despite his nerves. "The humans have already detected our probe networks," he announced. "Our sensors show they've been actively hiding their military capabilities. Think about that. They knew we were watching and chose to hide their strength. That's not the behavior of a primitive species." General Vale's voice boomed through the communication link from his flagship. "Your concern is noted, junior member, but our fleet is the largest ever assembled. We carry weapons that can shatter moons. No developing civilization could possibly stand against us." "That's exactly my point," Reith insisted. "The humans aren't following any normal development pattern. Their history shows they advance fastest when faced with overwhelming odds. By sending this fleet, we're not preventing a threat. We're creating one." The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one spoke up to support him. Lord Blake called for the next item on the agenda, and Reith's warning was forgotten. Later that evening, as Reith watched the last supply ships leave for Earth, Mentor found him again in the archives. "I believe you," the old archivist said quietly, "and I think you're right about the humans hiding their true capabilities. Look at this." He handed Reith a very old data crystal. "I found records of another civilization that tried to conquer Earth long ago. They were never heard from again." Reith took the crystal with trembling hands. "What happened to them?" Mentor's eyes turned toward the sky where the fleet had disappeared. "I suppose we're about to find out." Captain James Miller stood at the window of Earth's Defense Command, watching the stars. The massive underground facility hummed with activity as operators monitored deep space sensors. They had been tracking the alien fleet since it entered their outer defense grid 3 days ago. "Captain," called Lieutenant Adams from her monitoring station. The alien fleet just passed Mars' orbit. Their formation suggests both military and diplomatic vessels. Miller nodded, his reflection grim in the reinforced glass. Earth had known about the Galactic Council for years, carefully hiding their observations behind stealth technology. They had watched, learned, and prepared. "What do our deep scans show?" Miller asked, turning to face the command center's main display. Chief Technology Officer Wilson stepped forward, his tablet displaying complex energy readings. Their ships are powered by standard antimatter drives. Nothing special, but they're carrying enough firepower to glass a continent. He paused, looking up at Miller. "Sir, they think they're coming to intimidate a primitive species." A small smile crossed Miller's face. "How long until they detect the Prometheus?" "They won't," Wilson replied confidently. "Our quantum camouflage is generations ahead of their scanning technology. They can't see what they don't know to look for." The room fell silent as a new alert flashed across the main screen. The alien fleet had launched communication probes toward Earth. "Incoming transmission," Adams announced. "They're broadcasting in over 1,000 languages." The message played through the command center speakers. "People of Earth, we come as representatives of the Galactic Council. We offer you the opportunity to join our civilized community under our guidance and protection. Please respond within one planetary rotation." Miller's eyes narrowed. The deep scan data told a different story. Weapon systems charging, targeting arrays active, shields at maximum. This wasn't a diplomatic mission. It was a show of force. "Sir," Adams called out again, her voice tense. "We're detecting energy buildups in their secondary weapon systems. They're trying to be subtle about it, but they're preparing to demonstrate their power," Miller finished. He straightened his uniform and pressed a button on the command console. "Get me the president." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Leaders from around the world joined an emergency conference while the alien fleet moved closer. They had prepared for this moment for decades, building defenses in secret while maintaining the appearance of a relatively primitive civilization. "The Council fleet has entered high Earth orbit," Adams reported. "They're positioning themselves over major cities. Classic intimidation tactic." Miller received the authorization code he had been waiting for. He took a deep breath and opened a channel to all Earth defense stations. "This is Captain Miller. Operation Lightning Strike is now in effect. Launch the Prometheus." Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, hidden by technologies the Council couldn't even imagine, humanity's first true warship awakened. The Prometheus was the culmination of 70 years of reverse-engineered alien technology combined with human innovation. It was a ship that broke half the laws of physics as the Council understood them. In the Council fleet's command ship, General Vale watched Earth with satisfaction. "See, they're not responding because they're afraid. Once we demonstrate our weapons on one of their uninhabited areas." "Sir," his sensor officer interrupted, panic in his voice. "Something's emerging from their ocean." The water bulged and parted as a massive dark shape rose into the air. The Prometheus emerged like a rising shadow, water cascading off its quantum-armored hull. It was larger than any ship in the Council fleet, its design unlike anything they had ever seen. Vale stared in shock as his sensors tried and failed to analyze the vessel. "Impossible," he whispered. "They're supposed to be primitive. They're supposed to be—" "Sir," his communication officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the human ship." Captain Miller's voice filled the Council ship's bridge, calm and clear. "Galactic Council vessels, this is Captain James Miller of the Earth defense ship Prometheus. You have entered Earth space with hostile intent while hiding behind diplomatic pretense. This is not how civilized species behave." He paused for effect. "You have 1 hour to retreat beyond Mars' orbit. After that, we will demonstrate why it's unwise to threaten humanity." In the Council chamber, watching through their quantum feed, Lord Blake turned to Reith. "It seems," he said quietly, "that we should have listened to your warning." General Vale paced on his command bridge, watching the massive human warship hover silently in Earth's orbit. His senior officers huddled around the scanning stations, trying to make sense of the readings from the Prometheus. "Report," Vale barked. What are we dealing with? His chief science officer looked up, confusion clear on his face. Sir, the ship's hull. It seems to bend light around it. Our sensors can't get proper readings. It's as if parts of it exist in multiple dimensions at once. Vale slammed his fist on a nearby console. 1 hour. The humans had given them 1 hour to retreat, but his pride wouldn't let him run, not when his fleet outnumbered them 100 to 1. Sir, his weapons officer called out. The human ship is powering up something, but this can't be right. He double-checked his readings. It's drawing more power than our entire fleet combined. Aboard the Prometheus, Captain Miller watched the Council fleet's frantic activity with calm interest. He turned to Chief Wilson. Are they trying to scan us? Wilson nodded, a slight smile on his face. Their sensors are bouncing off our quantum shell like rocks off a mountain. Should we give them a little peek at what we can do? Miller considered for a moment, then nodded. Nothing too dramatic, just enough to make them reconsider their position. Power up the gravity lens. The front of the Prometheus began to glow with a soft blue light. Streams of energy danced across its hull, forming patterns that seemed to defy the laws of physics. In the Council fleet, alarms began blaring. General, the science officer shouted, the human ship is generating a gravitational field that, he struggled to find the words. Sir, they're bending space itself. Vale watched in horror as the Prometheus created a small, controlled gravitational lens in front of it. Through the lens, they could see distant galaxies, their light bent and focused by the human ship's incredible power. Impossible, Vale whispered. This technology. We've theorized about it for centuries, but never. His words were cut off as his communication officer jumped from his seat. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the Council chamber. Lord Blake is demanding to know what's happening. In the Council chamber, the assembled members watched through their quantum feed in stunned silence. Reith stood next to Lord Blake, his earlier warnings now proving terrifyingly accurate. Those aren't just weapons, Reith explained, pointing to the energy patterns on the Prometheus. Look at their hull design, the way they manipulate gravity. They're not just ahead of us in military technology. They understand the fundamental laws of the universe differently than we do. Lord Blake nodded slowly. All this time, we thought we were watching them. But they were watching us, learning from our mistakes, improving on our technology. On the Prometheus, Lieutenant Adams monitored the Council fleet's communications. They're panicking, sir. Some of their ships are beginning to turn around. Miller nodded. Good. Sometimes the best way to prevent a fight is to show your strength clearly. He turned to Wilson. Power up the quantum arrays. Let's show them one more thing. The Prometheus's hull began to shimmer, and suddenly there were 5 of them, perfect copies floating in formation around Earth. The Council fleet's sensors couldn't tell which was real, because in a way they all were. Quantum superposition on a macroscopic scale, Wilson explained proudly. We exist in multiple states simultaneously. They can't fight what they can't pin down to a single reality. Vale stared at the multiple warships now surrounding his fleet, his pride finally giving way to wisdom. Send the order, he said quietly. All ships are to fall back beyond Mars' orbit. As the Council fleet began their retreat, Miller opened a channel to them one last time. A word of advice, General Vale. Next time you meet a new civilization, try talking to them as equals first. You might be surprised what you can learn. In the Council chamber, Lord Blake turned to his assembled members. I believe, he said carefully, that we need to reconsider our first contact protocols. And perhaps, he looked at Reith, we should start listening to those who advise caution. The Prometheus maintained its position, watching the Council fleet retreat. Humanity had made its point without firing a shot. Sometimes the best show of strength is the wisdom to know when not to use it. Admiral Thex took command of the Council fleet after General Vale's order to retreat. Standing on his flagship's bridge, he watched the 5 versions of the Prometheus with growing anger. No primitive species should have this kind of power. Sir, his tactical officer reported, half our fleet has already moved beyond Mars' orbit as the humans demanded. Thex's face darkened. Cowards. We are the Galactic Council. We do not run from primitives who got lucky with technology. He turned to his weapons officer. Target their lunar bases. Let's see how they react when we threaten their colonies. On the Prometheus, Lieutenant Adams detected the weapon lock immediately. Captain, 3 council ships are targeting our moon installations. Miller's expression remained calm. Interesting choice, Admiral, he muttered. Then louder, open a channel to their flagship. The screen lit up with Admiral Thex's face. His alien features were twisted in a mix of fear and defiance. This is your final warning, Miller said firmly. Your weapons can't penetrate our quantum shields, but if you fire on our moon, we will be forced to demonstrate why that would be a mistake. Thex laughed, a harsh sound. You think your one ship, no matter how advanced, can stop our entire fleet. We have ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. Your choice, Miller replied simply and cut the transmission. He turned to Wilson. Power up the null field. Defensive measures only. The council ships fired. Multiple energy beams streaked toward the moon, each powerful enough to crack a planet's crust. But they never reached their target. The 5 versions of the Prometheus shifted, their quantum states collapsing into a single vessel. A sphere of darkness expanded from the ship, growing to encompass the attacking council vessels. Inside the sphere, all energy simply stopped. On Thexa's flagship, every system went dark. The mighty warships floated helplessly in space, their weapons powerless, their engines dead. Only life support remained functioning. What did they do to us? Thex whispered in the darkness. Miller's voice came through their emergency systems. We call it a null field. It selectively cancels out certain types of energy. Right now, your ships can't generate any power for weapons or engines. Don't worry, we left your life support alone. We're not monsters. In the council chamber, the members watched in horror as their mighty warships drifted helplessly in space. Lord Blake stood up. Enough, he announced. We were wrong. Send the emergency surrender signal. Reith stepped forward. Sir, look at the human ship. They're not attacking. They could destroy our fleet, but they're just holding them. Back in space, Miller was receiving a transmission from Earth Command. He listened carefully, then nodded to his crew. Admiral Thex, he broadcast to the disabled ships. Earth's governments have authorized me to offer you assistance. We will provide emergency power to help your ships return home safely. In exchange, we expect the Council to open proper diplomatic relations with Earth as equals. In the darkness of his bridge, Thex finally understood. The humans could have destroyed them at any time. Instead, they chose to show mercy. We accept, he said quietly. The Prometheus began emitting a controlled energy beam, providing power to the stranded council ships. One by one, their systems came back online. On Earth, in the Defense Command Center, the President's image appeared on the main screen. Well done, Captain Miller. Now, would you like to be Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council? Miller smiled and shook his head. Thank you, but no, Madam President. I'm a captain, not a diplomat. But I know someone who would be perfect. He sent a message to the council chamber. There's a junior member named Reith. He's the only one who tried to understand us before judging us. He'd make an excellent ambassador for both sides. As the council fleet limped home, escorted by the Prometheus, humanity prepared for its new role in galactic politics. They had proven themselves not just technologically superior, but morally worthy of their power. In the council chamber, Lord Blake drafted a new first contact protocol. At the top, in large letters, he wrote, "First, listen. Then, learn. Only then, act." 1 week after the confrontation, the Prometheus led the damaged council fleet through space at a gentle pace. Captain Miller stood on his bridge, watching the council ships struggle with their partially restored power systems. "Status report on the council fleet?" Miller asked. Lieutenant Adams checked her displays. "Most ships are operating at 40% power, sir. Our emergency power feeds are stable, but their systems weren't designed for our quantum energy transfer." Wilson approached with a tablet. "Captain, we're picking up some interesting chatter from the council ships. They're trying to analyze how our null field worked. He smiled. "They're not even close to understanding it." Miller nodded. "Let them try. The best defense is letting others underestimate you." He paused, then added, "Though I suppose that's not our strategy anymore." A new alert flashed on the main screen. 3 more Council fleets had appeared at the edge of their sensors, weapons hot and moving fast. "Looks like some Council members didn't get the message," Adams said, fingers flying over her controls. "These ships are even bigger than the First Fleet." Miller sighed. "Open a channel to Admiral Thex." The Admiral's face appeared on screen, looking embarrassed. "Captain Miller, I apologize. These are the Council's reserve fleets. They didn't believe our reports about your capabilities." "I understand," Miller replied calmly. "Would you mind if we provided another demonstration? One that everyone can see this time?" Thex nodded slowly. "Perhaps that would be wise." Miller turned to Wilson. "Power up the reality anchor. Let's show them something they'll never forget." The Prometheus began to glow with a deep purple light. The space around it seemed to bend and twist, as if reality itself was being rewritten. "Sir," Adams reported, "the hostile fleets are charging weapons." "Let them," Miller said. "Wilson, are we ready?" "Reality anchor at full power, sir. Space-time fabric is stable and under our control." Miller opened a broadcast to all ships in the area. "Attention Council vessels. We will now demonstrate why attacking Earth would be a mistake. Please observe carefully." The Prometheus released a pulse of energy unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. As it spread outward, it passed harmlessly through Thex's damaged fleet. But when it reached the attacking ships, something incredible happened. The Council's mighty warships didn't explode. They didn't break apart. Instead, they simply stopped. Completely stopped. Not just their engines or their weapons, but time itself had stopped for them. In the Council chamber, watching through their quantum feed, the members stood in shocked silence. The attacking fleets hummed motionless in space, frozen in an instant of time. What did they do?" Lord Blake whispered. Reith, who had been studying human technology, answered quietly. "They created a localized time-stop field. Those ships aren't dead or destroyed. They're just..." paused. On the Prometheus, Miller watched the frozen ships with a serious expression. "How long can we hold them like that, Wilson?" "As long as we need to, sir. The reality anchor is stable." Miller nodded and opened another broadcast. "To the Council members watching this, those ships and their crews are unharmed. They are experiencing no passage of time. We can release them whenever we choose. This is not a weapon of destruction, but one of peace." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Humanity does not want war. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to be part of it, but we will not be bullied, threatened, or controlled. Ever." In the Council chamber, Lord Blake stood up. "Release their ships, Captain. You have made your point. The Council votes immediately to accept Earth as a full and equal member of the galactic community." Miller smiled and nodded to Wilson. Another pulse from the Prometheus, and the frozen ships returned to normal time, their crews unaware that anything had happened. "Thank you, Lord Blake," Miller replied. "Now shall we discuss the future, one where humanity and the Council work together instead of against each other." As the Council members nodded in agreement, Reith looked out at the Prometheus with pride. Humanity had proven itself not just powerful, but wise in how they used that power. The galaxy would never be the same. The great crystal dome of the Council chamber looked different now. Next to the ancient banners of the founding species hung a new flag, the blue and white symbol of Earth, showing humanity's place as equals among the stars. Captain Miller walked through the chamber's main hall, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor. The same Council members who had once feared and doubted humanity now nodded respectfully as he passed. Behind him, through the chamber's massive windows, the Prometheus floated majestically against the backdrop of stars. Lord Blake waited at the central platform, holding an ancient crystal tablet, the Council's founding document. Next to him stood Reith, now wearing the formal robes of Earth's ambassador to the Council. "Captain Miller," Lord Blake said warmly, "I never thought I'd say this, but humanity has taught the Council more in 1 month than we've learned in 1,000 years. Miller smiled. Sometimes the best teachers are those who were once students. We learn from watching you, both your strengths and your mistakes. The chamber filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Many had traveled for weeks just to witness this historic moment. Earth was about to become the first civilization in Council history to join as equals from their first contact. Reith stepped forward. The technology sharing program is already showing amazing results. Our scientists still can't believe how humans made such different discoveries from the same basic laws of physics. We had to think differently, Miller explained. When you've been around for 50,000 years, it's easy to assume you know everything. Humanity knew we didn't know everything, so we kept looking for new answers. Lord Blake raised his hands, and the chamber fell silent. Today, he announced, we correct a great mistake. We thought wisdom came only with age, that younger civilizations needed our guidance and control. He looked at Miller. Humanity has shown us that wisdom comes not from age, but from understanding. He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber. It showed the Prometheus using its reality anchor, the null field, and the quantum superposition drive. Next to each image appeared new council regulations. All member species would now be judged by their actions and wisdom, not their age or technology level. The treaty is ready, Lord Blake said, presenting the crystal tablet to Miller. Earth will have a permanent seat on the council. Your technology remains your own, but you've agreed to share your scientific methods and ways of thinking. He smiled. Though I must admit, many of our scientists are struggling to understand how humans make such mental leaps. Miller took the tablet. That's the point, isn't it? We all think differently. Together, we'll discover things none of us could find alone. As he signed the treaty, the chamber erupted in applause. Centuries of council tradition changed in a moment, replaced by something better. Reith approached Miller afterward. What will you do now, Captain? The council has offered you any position you want. Miller looked out at the Prometheus. I'm a captain, not a politician. There are more stars to explore, more civilizations to meet. He turned to Reith. The council needs to learn to talk to new species as equals. How about we work together? You as the ambassador, me as the captain who takes you there. Like a new first contact team. Reith asked excitedly. Exactly. No more intimidation fleets. Just honest diplomacy backed by the wisdom to know when to show strength and when to show restraint. Lord Blake joined them. The council approves. We've already identified 3 promising young civilizations. Perhaps, with humanity's help, we can welcome them properly this time. As the celebration continued, Miller stood by the window, watching the Prometheus. The ship was more than just a display of power. It was a symbol of humanity's approach to the universe. Innovation tempered by wisdom, strength guided by mercy. Ready to explore the galaxy, Captain? Reith asked, joining him at the window. Miller nodded. As long as we remember the lesson we taught the council. True power isn't about having the strongest weapons. He turned to face the chamber full of different species working together. It's about knowing when not to use them. The Prometheus's quantum drive hummed to life, preparing for its next mission. Humanity had changed the galaxy not through force, but through wisdom, and this was just the beginning.